Dari Malaysia,
Last night, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim said Malaysia strongly condemned the burning of the Quran at a demonstration in Stockholm, led by Rasmus Paludan of Stram Kurs, a far-right party.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, sahabat cerita sekitar. Kita akan mereaksi sebuah video yaitu tentang pembakaran kitab suci Al-Qur'an, yang mana di sini banyak negara yang mengutuknya ya. Jadi sahabat, sebelum kita lanjut, jangan lupa like dan subscribe-nya untuk membangun channel ini, agar channel ini selalu memberikan info-info terbaru tentang cerita sekitar ya. Negara mana sajakah yang merespon atas pembakaran kitab suci Al-Qur'an ini? Oke sahabat, jangan berlama-lama, kita ikuti saja videonya. Ini dia videonya.
pembakaran kitab suci Al-Qur'an di Swedia Sabtu lalu menuai reaksi keras dari berbagai penjuru dunia. Aksi pembakaran itu dilakukan oleh seorang politisi Swedia di depan kedutaan Turki di ibu kota negara itu. Reaksi keras datang di antaranya dari Qatar.
Ini ya, Paludan ini namanya kayaknya.
And call on the international community to shoulder its responsibilities to reject hatred and violence.
Dari Mesir,
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in a post on Facebook that it was a disgraceful act that provokes the feelings of hundreds of millions of Muslims around the world.
Dari kerajaan Arab Saudi,
Kerajaan Arab Saudi memang harus dikritik benar-benar ini ya, orang-orang seperti ini.
dari Malaysia,
Last night, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim said Malaysia strongly condemned the burning of the Quran at a demonstration in Stockholm, led by Rasmus Paludan of Stram Kurs, a far-right party.
bahkan dari komunitas Yahudi di Turki.
Ini Yahudi jangan-jangan cuma
Namun reaksi paling keras datang dari pemerintah dan rakyat Turki.
cuma apa ya? Gak bisa dibilang lah, pokoknya dia sendiri yang tahu.
Turkey called it a vile act. The Quran is regarded as the word of God in Islam, and any attack on it is deeply offensive to Muslims. What has upset Turkey just as much is that Swedish authorities apparently allowed Rasmus Paludan to burn the Quran while the police and media looked on.
Depan kedutaan Turki ini ya,
has very strong free speech
di
laws.
Swedia.
Ankara has now cancelled a visit due by the Swedish defence minister that was aimed at helping to remove Turkey's
Tapi
objections
kenapa ya para polisi ini nggak
to the NATO
melarangnya
military
ya?
alliance along with Finland.
Apa mereka ini pro ya dengan sang pembakar tadi ya?
In retaliation, around 200 people protested outside the Swedish consulate in Istanbul.
We are here in front of Swedish embassy with our youth division to protest the act of burning Quran in front of our consulate in Sweden.
Speaking to a Swedish newspaper, Turkey's communication director Fahrettin Altun said,
There is a difference between freedom of speech and incitement against a group of people. The Turkish constitution also guarantees freedom of expression. Burning the Quran outside the Turkish embassy has nothing to do with freedom. It's inciting violence against Muslims, including Swedish Muslims.
in the last 30 years there have been 8 different attacks on the Islamic community. In 1991, 25-year-old student from Iran was shot in the face. In 1993, 2 Somali boys were stabbed and a mosque burned down. An arson attack on Malmo Mosque in 2003, with another taking place only 2 years later in 2005. In 2014, more arson attacks took place in 3 mosques. In 2017, an Islamic center was burned down. In 2022, Paludan burned a copy of the Holy Quran. Other countries, including Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Kuwait, and Pakistan, also denounced the Quran burning.
Dari semua reaksi terhadap aksi pembakaran tersebut, pendapat berbeda datang dari seorang jurnalis independen bernama C.J. Wullerman.
Hello everyone, I'm C.J. Wullerman.
Siapakah C.J. Wullerman? Dia adalah seorang jurnalis Australia yang merupakan pembela muslim progresif melawan musuh-musuh Islam, serta aktif melawan Islamofobia. Sebelum menjadi pembela Islam, dia adalah seorang pembenci Islam. Berikut pengakuannya tentang bagaimana pandangannya berubah.
A question I'm often asked by viewers of this program is why do I care so much about injustices in the Muslim world when I'm not, in fact, a Muslim? So here it goes. I do hold a great deal of affection for Islam, which is unsurprising given I have studied the religion intimately and professionally for the past dozen years, while also spending a great amount of time living among and working with Muslim communities. And I can also tell you this, that as an agnostic, were I to one day be convinced of a holy creator, then I have no doubt that Islam would be the religion for me. Because as a journalist and a human rights activist, no other faith speaks to the values I hold dear to my heart. You see, Islam not only promotes justice and respect for human rights, but also teaches people to live together in peace and harmony, regardless of race, class and belief. But with all of that said, I held a completely different attitude towards Islam exactly 17 years ago. In fact, I was an Islamophobe. For a 4-year period after witnessing an Al-Qaeda-sponsored terrorist attack in Indonesia in 2005, a night when 2 suicide bombers detonated themselves among women and children on Bali's Jimbaran beach, killing 23 people. It fell upon me and 4 of my closest friends to sort the living from the dead, and then move the injured to an area safely away from the beach until ambulances arrived. That night would forever change the trajectory of my life. Because until that moment, I had never given Islam a second thought. Even though I lived permanently in Indonesia for 2 years at that point. But for the days, weeks and months that followed, I became obsessed with Islam and blamed it for the horrific violence I witnessed. Is that over the course of the next several months, I went from being an agnostic towards religion to a fully fledged Islam-hating new atheist. But not only was my change being influenced by popular Islam writers, but also the US-led war on terror, which by 2005 had morphed into a fully fledged war on Muslims. We were being led to believe the Quran was responsible for 9/11, the London bombings, and the attack I witnessed in Bali. We were told that this was a clash of civilizations, that Islam has bloody borders, while the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan were sold as civilizing missions. In 2008, I published a book that condemned religion, all religions, and it gave me a large audience among the growing anti-Islam crowd in the United States. But long ago I instructed my publisher to remove the book from print because it no longer reflects the person I am today. So I now know what you're thinking. What was it that made me, CJ, suddenly wake up and realize that my hateful attitudes towards Islam were wrong? Well, for a lack of a better phrase, my first come to Muhammad moment occurred in 2009 when I read Mahmoud Mamdani's book, which unpacked many of the lies the mainstream media was telling about Islam during the early years of the war on terror. This book ignited a fire within me. It made me want to understand Islam in a deep and intimate way. And because I was fortunate to be living in Indonesia at the time, I had access to some truly great Islamic scholars. Through them I came to understand how the Quran and Islamic hadiths squared with the life and times of the Prophet Muhammad. I came to see him as a remarkably inspirational figure, an individual who not only defended his people against devious enemies, but also a leader who delivered justice, peace and equality while eradicating corruption and vice. He was a revolutionary against oppression and injustice, the same way Jesus Christ stood up for the downtrodden and those crushed under the heel of Roman occupation. Ultimately, I guess what you could say is this, that whereas an Islamist terrorist attack had turned me into an anti-Islam bigot, studying the Quran and experiencing Islamic culture turned me into an activist against Islamophobia. And I've spent much of the past 14 years using my journalism to counter the kind of Islamophobic tropes and narratives that once seduced me. You see, Islamophobia is seductive because it feels good, for it allows you to believe it's they who are backwards and barbaric, and it's we who are enlightened and civilized. It's the great lie told by all colonial powers to justify the pacification and subjugation of those who stand in the way of our capitalist exploits and imperial projects. It allows you to forget the horrors and injustices carried out in our name against the less fortunate other. Islamophobia also allows you to pretend that European colonialism never destroyed civic, social and political life in Muslim-majority countries it occupied. It allows you to pretend violence in Muslim-majority countries is the product of ancient rivalries and not the legacy of colonial, divide and rural strategies. But the good news is this. Islamophobia is indeed curable. I was cured by understanding Islam from Muslims, rather than from those who wish only to profit from the demonization of them. I was cured by taking a closer look at my country's role in the global cycle of violence. I was cured because I became aware I was unwell. But if I can cure myself to the psychological disease that is Islamophobia, then you can too. You, like me, will come to see the unique and unmistakable beauty that sits within the Islamic faith. You just need to take the first leap. As for me, I continue to seek and attain a better understanding of what is indeed the world's most beautiful religion.
Dan inilah pandangannya tentang insiden pembakaran kitab suci Al-Qur'an di Swedia.
Bagaimana pandangannya?
Many of you have reached out asking that we do an episode on the recent burning of the Quran in Sweden, an act of racist hate that has rightfully drawn scorn from the entire Muslim world. Well, as a former anti-Islam bigot, I will tell you how you can stop these kind of anti-Islam attacks from reoccurring. Stop giving him and other white domestic terrorists the attention they so desperately crave. Because every time you share a video, a tweet or Facebook post about this racist Swedish guy's outrageous and vile act, you're rewarding him with even more publicity, which in turn inspires other anti-Islam hating attention seekers to step out of the sewage in search of their 15 minutes of fame. You know, I really believe Turkey's President Erdogan and the United Nations made a grave error of misjudgment in publicly condemning this obnoxious fool, because in an instant it made this total nobody an instant somebody. He's now a celebrity among Muslim haters everywhere, from Europe to India. But nobody even knew his name barely 1 week ago, which means we can now expect more copycat attacks against the Quran. You see, the Islamophobia industrial complex thrives on media attention. It's their only source of oxygen. Without it, they don't exist. So the best way to stop more of his attacks from happening is by ignoring him and anybody else who thinks desecrating Islam's holy book is a certain and easy path to fame and fortune. To put this into some kind of personal context, I'm attacked by Islam-hating online trolls every day. You only have to see some of the replies to my Twitter posts to see that. But even when they're threatening to kill me and rape my wife and children, I choose to ignore them. Why? Because I know by replying to an anonymous or insignificant troll, I'm not only amplifying him, but also giving him instant relevance among those who wish me hate or harm, which will only encourage more threats against me and my family. But when I ignore them, they die alone in the darkness. But most of all, Muslims should feel emboldened and encouraged by these desperate acts, because every single time an irrelevant fool burns a copy of the Quran, it means Islam is winning and the haters are losing, because they are admitting they have no valid or legitimate arguments against your religion, only random acts of insanity and madness. These Islam haters are desperate because they know there's nothing they can do to stop Islam. They know Islam will soon be the world's dominant religion and the last standing religion on this planet. That is just simple and objective math. Ultimately, Islam has won and they have lost. The sound you hear when they burn the Quran is the last pathetic scream of the losers. So as a Muslim, your best revenge against racists like him is to live your best life in accordance with your Islam.
Jangan lupa like dan subscribe ya kan. Masya Allah, tabarakallah. Semoga mereka yang telah membenci Islam, yang telah membakar kitab suci kita Al-Qur'an, mendapatkan hidayah dari Allah. Kita doakan saja mereka seperti itu, dan semoga Allah memberikan hidayahnya, dan semoga ini bisa menjadi pelajaran bagi saya dan juga sahabat-sahabat semua. Ya, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.